I'm Gemma, and this is a chat with Gemma. I haven't made videos for a while. I've had a lot going on. And as you probably already know if you watch my videos, my father died. It's just over 3 months ago now. And he was very elderly. I'm old. So, but it was still it was a long drawn out thing. It was very difficult for him. And it took a long time. And so it was extremely stressful, and I was worrying about him day and night. And I did retire about this time last year, and I sort of thought, oh, I could do this and I could do that. None of that happened, and then Dad sort of started to decline quite a bit, and so my time was really taken up with that, which I was very glad to do, of course. So there's been now kind of, well, how am I going to be retired going on? I've just been sick with an infection, so I think I'm just about normal now. So given my anxiety, depression history and living alone, I don't like being sick. It sort of really just upsets my apple cart completely. Anyway, without going into all of that. So yes, I haven't made any videos, and then I wasn't getting many views, so I sort of thought, oh, well, that's kind of, the people have spoken, and I just won't make any more videos. And I thought, well, I could make some videos of a different kind. Maybe I could pray for people or something like that. And I thought, nah. And I thought, no, well, there we go. I'm not going to waste time if it's not fruitful. I like to be fruitful about my use of my time. And so then I thought, no, so I won't make any more videos. So I made another video. And that wasn't received well. Very small number of views. So I thought, well, that's it. That's it now. Clearly that's it. So, okay, that's all right. Not a problem. I will use my time for other things now. That's okay. And I thought, well, I could, don't have to shut the door. I could make another video at some stage. But to be honest, the ideas weren't coming to me. I was probably borderline depressed. I can't say I was depressed because people who are depressed, there's no doubt about it. And it can stop them from functioning. I was not like that. I was functioning. But very, very tired. Very, very tired. And I didn't feel like doing them. So I just kind of thought, I'll just coast along, see what happens. Maybe I'll never make a video again, or maybe I will, but down the track. So then I thought, no, that's it. So I made another video, and it got 4 views. The last I've looked, it's had 15. So that's, whichever angle you look at that from, it's not a substantial number. So, I mean, if you're talking about millions of dollars, then yes, $15 million is a substantial number, but we're not talking about millions, we're just talking about the 15. So, people just weren't interested. And maybe, you've got to take into account that whole logarithm of YouTube and all of that, and how that works. And I'm not going to spend hours trying to work that out because I'm just not that interested. So anyway, I kind of thought, yeah, I'll shut the door on that. And now that I'm starting to kind of get a bit better and I'm a bit less exhausted and a bit less stressed, I did think I'd make a video. And what I thought I'd make a video about is the purposelessness of life. So we can kind of, I don't care who you are and how much money you are and how famous you are and whether you've got a life that other people would just say was heaven on earth, magnificent, whatever. Everybody has a time when they feel this kind of feeling or thought comes into your head of, this is pointless. And I'm going to read to you, this is a book that's in the library, in the Bible. I don't know why it's in the Bible, but anyway, it is. It's in the Catholic Bible. There's another version of the Bible that the Protestants use, which has less books in it. So this, I don't know what's taken out for that. But this is called the Book of Ecclesiastes. Now, this is in the Bible. As I say, I don't know why it's in the Bible. It starts pretty badly. It's like the Vanity of Vanities one, if you know the Bible at all. And they read it at Mass. And I've always thought, what are you reading that for? It's kind of, doesn't seem even godly. But it does go on to talk about God and the things we should do and the things we shouldn't do. But before that, it bangs on quite a bit about the meaninglessness of life. Anyway, I'm just going to start reading it. Don't run away just yet. In other words, don't be put off. Here are the words of Koheleth, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Meaningless, meaningless, says Koheleth, meaningless. Everything is meaningless. A generation goes, a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises, the sun sets, hastening towards the place where it rises. Blowing to the south, turning to the north, the wind goes round and round, and after all its rounds, it has to blow again. All rivers flow into the sea, but the sea is never full. To the place from where the rivers come, there they return again. All words become wearisome, and speech comes to an end. But the eye has never seen enough, nor the ear heard too much. What has happened will happen again, and what has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. And on it goes in that vein. And when I'm in a kind of mood like I've been in lately, where, as I say, probably a medical person would say it's borderline depression, I did go through some panic attacks and some, I suppose, low-level trauma during Dad's decline and then death. I'm not trying to whinge and whine, although I love doing that normally, but that's just the facts. So when you're like that and you kind of, I don't know, you're trying to get something out of your handbag and you pull out 9 things before you get to the one thing that you were trying to get out of there. Or, you know what I mean, you're looking through your pencil case and the blue biro is invisible, unable to be found until you take everything out, and gosh, it's there all the time. How did that happen? You know what I'm talking about. These things make you go, and so that's how I've been. Very on edge, very kind of easily annoyed by things. Like, for example, yesterday, I don't know what was in the air. Demons, probably. But I tell you, without a joke, it didn't matter where I went to put my foot, or where I went to drive my car, or back my car, or what corner I went to turn. Every single time, there was another human being in the world trying to be on that little square inch of land just at the exact same moment. Now, you're going to say that happens all the time, Gemma. Happens every day. Yes, it does, because we're all in places that are overcrowded unless you're way out in the bush or the outback or something. And yeah, that's for sure. These days it's the world's getting more and more populated, not less. So most people are living in crowded areas. But I'm telling you, yesterday was way over the top. The record-breaking day. I reckon every single time I went to just try to breathe in or out, there was somebody in the way. So you know what I mean. you're like your skin's been peeled off or something when you're going through a major life event like that. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And most people, unfortunately, experience that, and so they get very grumpy, and we all just go along being grumpy, and eventually it sort of wears off. And the human spirit being as resilient as it is, and the human body being as strong as it is, it's amazing, really. People get through things, they get over things, they move on. So what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about the fact that when you're going through something, the thought processes that you have are not necessarily the thought processes that shall I say, normal? Not meaning that in any kind of way. The next person, let's say, is going through. So then they're not perhaps perceiving things the way you are. And you hear people say, oh, I love life. I just love life. And, you feel like getting a bit of 4B2 and just tapping them with it. One of those blow-up baseball bats and just going, pop. Because, well, I don't know about you, I never feel like that. I would never say, I love life. Never. But some people say it. And some people do seem to lead pretty blessed lives, and but they still have their moments, don't they, when they're yelling and screaming because something's just not turned out the way they wanted it to turn out, or whatever the thing is. So everybody goes through this stuff because there's the devil out there. And so one of the thoughts that I have then is, so what are you doing about it, God? You're just sitting there, you're not going to intervene. And, of course, things happen to other people and you think, God, what is that? Even things through history. And I just think, God, how could you let that happen? But then, of course, you don't know the graces that people get. Sometimes somebody can appear to be dying, but they've already gone. So their body's going through this horrendous thing that people around them are going, oh my goodness, but they're not actually experiencing it anymore. Or if they're still in their body, the spirit's still in the body, the brain is shut down so much that they're not distressed. But I'm not saying people don't suffer. People do suffer terribly, and life at times can be agony. So you do kind of think like that, vanity of vanities, everything's meaningless way when you, like I have been and am at the moment. And you can very easily slip into a kind of a maybe not a very healthy, helpful attitude where just think everything's meaningless and I'm just going to sit here and wait to die. Do you remember when you were a child ever saying to your mum, well, I'm just going to go and kill myself now? Or, some people said, oh, I hate everything, or whatever it was, they were going to leave home, all those sorts of things. Well, nothing much changes when you're an adult. You can get these times where you feel exactly like you felt when you're a child. Maybe you don't say those sort of words exactly, but you're thinking and feeling pretty much along those same lines. I can identify with that. So I was watching a show the other day, and it was about these people. Oh, I think it was Richard Attenborough. And he was in a tiny bubble submarine thing. And he went down, I think they went down I think it was more than 2 miles, which is how far. Anyway, they went a long, long way down. That thing only had to crack and they were gone. But anyway, they made it back up again. So, but it was really interesting. I think if you could get over your claustrophobia, I think it could be quite enjoyable. Anyway, they went down and it got really pitch black, and you probably know this already, but there are animals on, not very many, but there are animals on the bottom of the ocean. And a lot of them don't see, they don't, I don't know, they just, I don't think they build anything, do anything. All they do is kind of float like this, really, really slowly along the bottom of the ocean. And their job, you might say, well, what, like, why would God create something that we can't even see and enjoy? And when you go back to before man and woman were created, there are animals. So what was the point? We weren't there to enjoy them. Obviously, they were there for God to enjoy. So God enjoys it. Because you think about the whale, you might say, oh, the whale's been created for us to enjoy. You would see a whale, if you do see it at all, like, no, you know, I don't know, 0.0000091% of its entire life. So you see what I mean? What's the point of it? Well, I don't think it's really for us. I think God lets us share in things, and he lets us enjoy things, but they're for him, not for us. And there was a time in my life where I was going through, it was pretty, like, it was unbearable. It was kind of 9 out of 10 on the unbearable scale, mostly of a psychological level, but also it was physical as well, because of the stress causes physical symptoms. And I would think about, what would happen to somebody if they were paralysed, you know, or if they couldn't see or hear, and things like this. And it would just give me nightmares, and I just couldn't stop thinking about these horrible things. And one day I went up to Mount Macedon and thought all I had the energy to do was just, because you can get out at the car park and just walk up to the cross. And it's quite a short walk, but for somebody who's pretty much sick with nerves, even that was about as much as I could do. So I'm walking along, thinking these things like, God, why would you leave somebody with a completely purposeless life? You know, somebody's just lying there. Or somebody who's gone so far with dementia that people are spoon feeding them and changing them and all of that all the time. What's the point? And of course, there are people who don't believe in God who would just say, you know, get a gun and shoot them. Why would you bother with them? But of course, we believe in God. We sort of think that's a little bit dangerous. You know, we can't do something like that if it's going to be a grave sin in the eyes of God. So what is the purpose? What purpose do they have? And there are some babies born like that are not going to live very long, and they just lie there and people care for them until they die. So what purpose is it? Well, just getting off the track for a little bit. It is interesting how when my mother died, and she'd gotten pretty bad with dementia, and she was just kind of sitting on the couch almost day and night. When she went, we missed her. There was the company. And I'm sure parents of a child like that, when the child does die, far too early, of course, they miss the child. So even just the life that's in the child, the presence of the child, the spirit of the child that's there, is like company, if that makes sense. And people can miss them profoundly. Yeah, they're not building a bridge or a house or, I don't know, curing cancer or whatever. But there's something about a life that, you know, God's all about life. So what is that? And it does seem to be the life of a person does seem to be a very profound and big, if I can use that word, thing in the eyes of God. So anyway, back on the track. I was on the track up this kind of steepish, but it's a path. It's an actual like bitumen path. And I'm getting slowly there, and I see there's a plaque because it's got like a square at the bottom like this, and you can walk around it and look over the view and all of that. It's quite nice, quite a lovely view, and it changes with the seasons and all of that. And there's a big rectangle plaque, and it's devoted to it's about like people who died during wars and stuff like that. But it says, "For the glory of God." And I thought, oh, that's what it's all about. It's not all for us. It's for the glory of God. And if he chooses to share eyesight with a blind person, that's his choice. This is all to the glory of God. So, you might say, well, there's a lot that demonstrates the meanness of God, the cruelty of God, and it's hard to argue against that. And a lot of Christians like to sort of, if you ask them a question like that, they like to say, oh, we can't talk that way, we don't think that way, or to brush it off, or, sweep it under the carpet and things like that. But isn't that a good question? Really? If we're going to deal with truth and facts. So how do we explain that? Well, I think it does come back to the things that God intends. So God doesn't necessarily have a job for us to do every single moment of our lives, but he has jobs for us to do, sort of dotted along the way. So going back to the big thing that was on the bottom of the ocean, the big thing eats all the, poop and rubbish and goodness knows what that comes, dead bodies, dead fish bodies and whale bodies and skin and bones and whatever, that fall down to the bottom of the ocean. It eats them and renders them sort of more biodegradable, if that's the word, or helps them to degrade more and to dissipate. I'm just making this up as I go along. But yeah, when you get old, you can't find your words anymore. I learned all this stuff at school, but it's gone. But you know what I'm trying to say. There are scavengers and there are creatures whose life is about cleaning the environment. Apparently the vulture is one of them. So we don't have vultures in Australia, but in countries that have them, they do a really terrific job of getting rid of a dead body. And apparently they can cope with all sorts of like sicknesses that might be in the body of the dead animal. The dead animal might have just had a heart attack and died, but they could have had some sort of disease or whatever and they've died. The vulture has such a strong acid in its stomach that apparently the acid kills just about anything. And so they themselves don't catch the disease. They don't get sick. The stomach just takes care of it all, and they render that the body of the dead animal into something much more ready to go into the ground. So sorry this turned into a science lesson. I should have gone to Teachers College to learn about science, but never knew this moment had come up. Anyway, so you see what I'm saying? We can have times where we do think, well, this is pointless. I washed the dishes yesterday. Why am I washing them now? I just dusted like last week. Look how thick it is now. This is pointless. And when we're in that low mood, I don't know what it is, but those things just get really high up in our minds and in our emotions. And when we sort of come out of it, we kind of start to look at the things that are purposeful. And some things we just enjoy doing just because it's enjoyable to do that. So we're allowed to do that. We're allowed to just enjoy things just for the sake of it. If I'm making a bracelet for myself, there's no real point to that, but I enjoy making it, and then I enjoy wearing it and showing it off, perhaps, or looking at it and thinking how pretty it is, that sort of thing. So, yeah, we're allowed to just enjoy things, but there are times when we do have a purpose, and as I've talked about before, we have multiple purposes. We don't just have a purpose, well, I'm going to be a teacher and then that's it. There are other things for you to do. And when you retire, that's not it. It's not over. You still have all sorts of things to do. And having spent time in an old people's home with my dad just recently, you can see that there are all sorts of different people amongst the residents, apart from the nurses and the assistants, those people. There are all sorts of purposes that they have for each other. It's amazing what they do for anybody who seems to be suffering or needs a bit of help. They can be so loving and so supportive to each other. Yes, there are times when they get crabby and maybe want to hit somebody, but you know what I mean? There's a lot of love there, and there's a lot of just human desire to help. So if you've got some purposeless stuff or stuff that seems meaningless, and it's possible you've got a bit of low grade or even high grade depression, but just know that there's always another day. There's always another week, month, year. You can be surprised having been at the lowest of the lows, and then in another year's time, just looking back and thinking, wow, I just don't think or feel like that now. Anyway, I've rattled on, so I'll stop there, but let me know whether you want me to keep making videos or not, and God bless you. Bye for now.